I was a bit worried when you said the new generation is going to own the space. I think that's the only thing they're going to own, the space, because the rest they just want to subscribe.
They're going to own the space of not owning.
Welcome to today's episode of the Product as a Service Champions podcast, bringing all subscription champions together to eliminate the sense of being alone when trying to navigate the complexities of the as-a-service landscape. I'm your host, Yann Toutant, and today we are diving into the fascinating world of subscription for home appliances. Our guest today is E-Lin Tan, a true champion in the product as a service world, particularly when it comes to household devices sector. Welcome, E-Lin.
Thank you, Yann. Happy to be here.
Good to have you. If I want to summarize your solution, what I would say is that it consists in providing Bosch appliances, home appliances, and a suite of services around them, all designed to make the life easier for your customers. For example, providing a top brand quality device with sustainability and affordability rolled into one convenient package, and hassle-free services from delivery, installation, repair, and take back. Is this a fair description of your solution, or do you want to add anything, E-Lin?
Yes, it is. And that's direct from the manufacturer, right? So direct from Bosch. And that's really important for us because at the end of the day, obviously, we can also go through other entities, but the element direct to consumer so that we truly can send reliable service and appliances to them is very important for us.
Yeah, of course. As a user, it's always better to be directly connected to the manufacturer to make sure you have the best service and the latest technology also.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, your subscription is part of the BlueMovement within BSH group. And I'm sure our listeners are curious to hear, why is it called the BlueMovement, and what is the BlueMovement? Could you guide us through, E-Lin?
Yeah, sure. So blue is the color of circularity, right? I'm not sure if
Sure.
you know that, but I'm pretty sure you, of all people, will know that. But usually sustainability is linked to the color green. That's why I think this is a fun fact. And why a movement? Because it's still not a norm, right? We believe that instead of owning, so there's a movement from ownership to access to services, access to usership, right? So in terms of home appliances, it would be more or less like you don't really want to have a washing machine for the sake of having a washing machine. You want to have clean clothes. You want the service, you want access to the service to clean clothes, right? And therefore, there is a movement towards this, right? And at the end of the day, why BlueMovement and not directly Bosch? Because we are an entrepreneurial unit within the BSH Home Appliance Group, which is owned by Bosch. And that's why, initial start of it, we are the entity with complete business responsibility to bring this new service to the end consumer. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's why BlueMovement, but still directly from BSH and Bosch.
Yeah, clear. And I'm very happy to hear you mentioning usership, which is a word that does not exist yet. So it shows that it's still a movement. And indeed, we all are interested by the outcome of a device. Of course, the joke of the washing machine is, does it also does the ironing? That's the the running joke.
That's the innovation element, right?
Exactly. But indeed, this economy of the performance and the outcome and the usership model is what is the BlueMovement addressing. Let's talk about your unique selling proposition. I love to ask, with your as-a-service model, what is the problem you are, or the problems you are solving with your product as a service solution?
So I think it's not very dissimilar to what other products as a service businesses offer, right? So we are actually reaching new target consumers, new access to different customer segments who otherwise would be able to just buy our Bosch and Siemens home appliances, because not everyone can afford it or want to afford it, because some people may be able to afford it, but they don't want to buy because they want, for example, flexibility to upgrade after 2 years or so when the new model comes, for example, or they simply want to have the flexibility to have more disposable income within the month. So, and for example, tenants, right? So why do tenants rent for 2 to 3 years a flat, right? So similarly to that, they could also now rent the amenities, which is the home appliances, right? So that's the logic, because so one part is affordability, to make it so easy to just have it in transparent, affordable monthly chunks, and that's all in. And the other is the flexibility. And again, for what are they affording, right? They are not just affording themselves the appliance itself, but the whole thing, right? So they don't have the inconvenience of unplanned stress when the washing machine breaks down or the dishwasher breaks down, because we also take care of repairing. It's all in that monthly fee. So this convenience all-in service is actually what we know these customer segments want, these consumers want, and those are the problems that we're solving. Additionally to that, obviously, we are doing it in a sustainable way. And therefore, it's really a noble thing. It always gives me raised hair, because it's so beautiful that I get to, in a corporate world, make a difference. Because we know that the CO2 handprint and all that is better. And the asset that otherwise might end up as an e-waste is actually taken back by us. We refurbish it and we actually bring it to the second and third life. And the consumers who come to us, they want this sustainable choice. They want to have a sustainable option, right? So those are the wants, needs, and pain points that we actually solve with our offering.
Mm-hmm. Affordability, flexibility, and circularity. That's
convenience,
yeah,
and
of course.
circularity. Exactly.
Yeah. It's true that when you think about what you just said, that you would rent a flat for 3 years, but you own the appliances in this flat. There's a kind of disruptive model here. Why owning what's inside and renting the walls, you say. Yeah, it's true.
It's all psychological, right? When we think about it, it's like, oh my goodness, ages ago, to lease a car was like, what, right? But then now it's getting to be a norm, and not to buy a home. In fact, very rich people actually choose to rent, because they want this flexibility, right? So, and therefore, the word rent is sometimes also just too much focus on the object itself, and that's why the topic is about the all-round experience, the all-round convenience, all-round service, access to that, and yet being affordable, transparent, and flexible to change when your life needs or life phase changes, right? So when you think about it, it's like such a no-brainer, but because it's not an everyday, so you just still need to bring this value proposition across so that the person might hopefully think like us, why not, rather than why.
Yeah, indeed. And this idea of evolution of your life and then evolution of your belongings is something you see more and more also for a bicycle for kids, for example. Your bicycle grow with your kids, and you just subscribe to a bicycle service and not buying a bicycle. It's
exactly
more and more common. That brings me to the next question for you, E-Lin, is what is the trigger? What is the first time this idea of introducing a subscription model in such an established organization like BSH? You must have been very disruptive. Can you share with us this moment?
Yeah, I must honestly, humbly say that I was not part of the founding team. I've been founding team for other entrepreneurial ventures. I am have that pioneer spirit at heart, but I cannot take credit for the birth
Okay.
of this.
Okay.
Right, I was watching as a very admiring colleague to the team that pioneered this, right? But as all things in a corporate world, all innovative things, right? Obviously, we've got a lot of trend scouting, right? Because yes, we are market leaders, but to be market leaders for decades to come, we always have to be 2 steps ahead, right? So we've got teams doing trend scouting, and we know that it's not just an economic trend or a consumer trend, and it's not just within our industry, but truly a global mega trend across industries, right? So whether it be content first, Netflix and all that, but even in fashion, in even coming towards our durable goods and furniture, right? So there is a strong trend, not to mention the consumer trend, especially Gen Z and millennials. It's such a norm for them to subscribe, right?
It is.
And they are actually going to own the space. And so as a market leader, as a big company who want to still be relevant and strong, obviously we need to play a part in such an important trend, right? So that's how it was born, obviously, right? And then, of course, there's the element of are we the right ones to do it, right? Because you can always say that we just produce, but we don't sell, right? Or we don't rent. So, of course, there are those elements as well. And for that part, just that, we are actually mainly B2B. So we are manufacturers of home appliances, and then we sell through our amazing retail partners, right? But we also believe now the consumers, as you shared, wanting this direct link to the first one to bring this to life, the manufacturer, and therefore D2C becomes important as well. And the element of how we can serve the consumer better when we're directly in touch, whether in sale D2C or rent D2C, is very important, because then we are in constant communication with the consumer and will understand what further innovations will make their lives better at home. And therefore, we can be better developers, better producers, and better manufacturers for the end consumer, right? And that's the element why we think, hey, marry the two, and therefore we say, okay, it's still obviously very new. Who knows what the potential would be? And therefore, when it was born, end of 2017 in the Netherlands, where you are, Yann, it was a small little venture to test, right? However, now we're in 2024, and we're also in Germany since 2021, and we see that the norm is getting bigger and bigger, or the trend is getting stronger and stronger. And therefore, obviously, we have higher ambitions to make it a bigger deal.
That's a beautiful journey. And I was a bit worried when you said the new generation is going to own the space. I think that's the only thing they're going to own, the space, because the rest they just want to subscribe.
They're going to own the space of not owning.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean,
exactly.
their mindset is like enjoying the present, right?
Yeah.
So they just want to enjoy the present and not like put too much in such that they have to pay back for the rest of their lives, right? So it's a totally different mindset. And I think although we are a little bit older, sometimes it's good that we also start to think this way, right? Life is short.
Of course. That brings me to the next question of you were describing your success. When we talk about as a service, there's always some question about KPIs. How do you measure your success? How do you track it? How good look like for you in terms of providing your subscription offers? Could you share that with us?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are basic subscription KPIs, which are different from traditional transactional sales KPIs, right? So instead of talking about net turnover, we talk about annual recurring revenue or monthly recurring revenue. And we talk about things like churn rate, because the non-payment or the bad debt does not come so much into the mind for transactional one-time sales, but it is super important for us when we are talking about subscription recurring revenue business model, right? And then, of course, when you're in the beginning of your journey, or even when you're bigger, how much it takes, or the cost of acquisition, whether it's acquiring a new customer or acquiring a subscription, a contract, that's very important, right? So those are some of the key elements that we look at. But in the end, how do we look at how do we make these numbers better, right? So lower churn rate, higher recurring revenue, higher efficiency, or rather lower cost of acquisition. We have to make customers happy, right? With the right offering, but at the right positioning, reaching out to them. And therefore, for me, we have to focus on customer happiness, consumer happiness, which is then NPS, right? Net Promoter Score, Trustpilot ratings, especially when we're, all in this new game, we have to focus. And even if we're a leader in the old game, we should always focus on customer satisfaction. So I would say that that's truly key, right? And then when you look at that, if they're happy, then your number of contracts per customer will also increase, the loyalty element, the consumer lifetime value element, right? So basically, if you make your customers happy, of course, your team happy as well, then your business would be happy too, and your KPIs would be happy too. So those are some of the KPIs.
Of course, that's a virtual circle. The cost of acquisition is a topic that comes back very often, because indeed there is a cost of acquisition of a customer to onboard a customer within the as-a-service model. But then when the customer is into this model, the cost of acquisition or the cost of renewal of this customer drops significantly. So when you're in a transactional model, there is a cost of acquisition that comes every 3 years, every 4 years. When you are into as-a-service model, the cost of acquisition is high at the start, but drops significantly when the contracts are being renewed. Do you recognize that?
Definitely, right? So, and that's the beauty, right? So, although I mentioned that we are still in an early stage where we're continuously testing and learning, and I hope we don't lose that fever. So, and yet already our customer base is very loyal, right? So, 30% own more than 3 subscriptions with us. So, so maybe the initial inertia, because they've never rented an appliance before, was there. But because of our USP of being Bosch, we are not just a fly-by-night, we are truly Bosch. And by the way, we just won the most trusted, we got ranked number 1 by Reader's Digest for the most trusted brand.
Congratulations.
So this is truly important for the customer, the potential consumer, to make that jump. And once the potential customer becomes a consumer for us, then obviously we need to deliver on the promise. And since we are Bosch, we deliver on the promise. And then they are happy. And the second step to, if I rented a dishwasher, why should I not rent a refrigerator and all that, becomes very simple, right? And to your point, they not only do that, it is for us much easier to convince them to go for the next contract with us, etc.
Very clear. Upselling, cross-selling, and of course increasing the experience of the user when he's satisfied with the first subscription. It's a win-win situation. Yeah.
Yes, and the beauty is that at the end of the day, it's not like that potential consumer didn't want to have a brand like a Bosch or a Siemens home appliance. She did, right? But maybe for affordable reasons, for flexibility reasons, or whatever, she didn't, right? But now with this step, we solve her pain points or her barriers, and then now she is a loyal Bosch a Siemens customer, and should she or should her life situation change, or should her needs change, and she wants to own, she could potentially also be a Bosch customer by buying, right? So, and that's
Correct.
the beauty of it. It's not a zero-sum game, right? It is making the pie bigger and bigger, and us able to reach, as Bosch and Siemens, we are able to reach the more end consumers with our appliances that we're so proud of, right? And services.
E-Lin, you were talking about feedback loops with your customers, and to keep constant connection with your customer to be able to understand how they use and how to increase their experience of using your solutions. Is there any specific feedback that you've received from a customer that has influenced your as-a-service offer?
Of course.
Yeah.
If not, we are not doing
two?
this seriously. Yeah.
Could
So
you share
first of
one or
all,
two?
we of course have the NPS surveys and all that we sent at various times in our relationship with them to understand how we can improve, right? So, and we take that very seriously. So just a little bit of an insight, right? So it's as simple as just having a Slack channel and then getting it, like we get the feed every day, right? So, and it's so cool to be so close to your consumer. And of course, you know, people always want the delivery to be more often, right? But so better, I mean, right? It's never good enough, right? So of course, we improve it with our partners. But the most interesting thing is, what do you miss, right? We ask them what they miss in our offering. And, you know, if they miss a certain product category or a service, then those are the things that we truly gain insight in, because that's the whole idea of being direct to your consumer. You find out how to make their lives better, and they tell you, right? So those are, for me, extremely important in order to be relevant for the consumer and improve her life at home, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for sharing that.
So we've been increasing our offering based on the feedback, obviously, but also upping the quality level or the service level for, you know, things like delivery, installation. Is it curbside? Is it door? Is it installed? Is it etc.?
Yeah. And that's a beautiful segue to a next question that I would like to share with the audience. It's the idea of the ecosystem. When you are an as-a-service provider, of course you have your own appliances, but you can also be integrating in your as-a-service offer appliances, services, consumables that are not coming from you, but are coming from third parties that you team up with to provide even better experience to the end user. Around your appliances, have you activated an ecosystem, and could you give a few examples?
Yeah, so this is definitely the direction that we want to strengthen, right? So, and an example would be when you use a washing machine or a espresso machine, then you've got your hot water and there's chalk, right? So to maintain and have a super performing espresso machine for amazing coffee, you need your descaler, right? Your consumable. And therefore, we have partners for these consumables, and we also have it as part of the service to send this, what we call care kit, to the end consumer, right? And obviously, this is just the start. And I'm a firm believer of the power of partnering, right? Which means that I don't think that every single service, every single accessory, consumable, etc., in order to use and enjoy this service of coffee serving machine or a clothes washing machine, right? Can be also coming from a partner. So I underline what you just said, right? So, and we have partners already as Bosch and Siemens, where we can also leverage more on the detergent, and then we can reach out to the coffee bean suppliers, etc., so that it becomes really an all-round experience and there's no hidden cost. And I think that's the added benefit for some of the consumers, but we still want to always be true to giving them options. And we have to be careful not to just say, you have that coffee bean, but it's only the one we chose for you. Then it's it's with a bitter taste, right? Pun intended, because maybe they don't like that particular coffee bean or the taste, right? It's a preference, and therefore that's another reason for partnering an entity, a company that specializes in that, right? So that we can actually still offer the consumer the potpourri of options when it comes to that consumable, for example, coffee beans, etc. So that is, I firmly believe that in the end, when we want to maximize consumer value, not just business value, we have to seek out what is the gap, what is the pain, what is the want of the consumer, and then chart out who is the best entity-wise to bring that value in that value chain to the consumer. And this is a case in point, right? We don't have to do everything ourselves, but if we work together, I think that we can truly together maximize the consumer value, but also the business value, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah. The importance of choosing the right partner in the ecosystem to offer the best experience for the user and to select and organize this ecosystem for the end user in the best, I would say, synergy way with your core solution. It's key.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's
Win-win.
key.
Yeah.
I would love to start to conclude. And there's one more question that I would say it's two more questions. One question that is very important for the audience is the circularity aspect of the model. Because of course, we hear very often that to be circular, you have to extend as much as possible the life cycle of a product. And you have mentioned at the start that circularity is also a component of your offer, and you as a manufacturer, keeping the ownership of the equipment that is being placed at the user allows you to address the recycling, repurposing, refurbishing of this equipment in a much proper way than the user would do himself. Could you elaborate on this very important topic for our audience, is how an as-a-service model can accelerate circular business models?
Yeah, so quite frankly, since we are Bosch and when we make a claim, we've got like 200 page report and thesis on it. In this way, we will also focus to get even more substantiation, right? So within this year. So, but basically the idea is this. So there are certain consumers who want to experience a new product when the new model comes, right? I think other than home appliances, the easy thing to understand is the iPhone, right? So every time there's an iPhone X+1, right? So, and therefore, it is important that there is also a market or a consumer segment that is willing to take the second life, right? Not the latest, but the refurbished or even the older generations, right? And in that way, we are actually saying that one asset which goes to Max Muller in the first life, for example, the washing machine goes to Max Muller in the first life, and then instead of ending up just somewhere like in e-waste, as we know, 80% end up in e-waste, and that's so sad. Quite a bit end up in my country, Malaysia, as well. And so we are actually saying, no, we save that asset, that washing machine, that particular product itself, and we take it back, we refurbish it, and since we know our products best as a manufacturer, we can refurbish it as good as new, and then bring it to the second person, the Yann Jansen. and Yann Jansen is happy to take the refurbished appliance, and therefore that particular asset's life or usage is lengthened, and and it goes on, right? So and it's very exciting to share also, like even though we are pretty young, 15% of our assets are now in third life or more. So it's and we have very stringent criteria right now to say that if it is not as good as new, we won't bring it back without being transparent. And we are right now just being very stringent on bringing it back to life only if it's as good as new, right? So with that, instead of ending waste after 2 years or so, we are actually prolonging that particular asset. And it's not about comparing this to, for example, if somebody buys a washing machine and really makes use of it for 10 or 13 years, and since it's Bosch or Siemens washing machine, it does last so long. And, it's not about comparing to that, because it's a totally different consumer segment, right? And that's why it is very important to have the right reference point, right? So it's not just the CO2 footprint, because you would say, oh, you're incurring actually the delivery and the logistics of bringing it there and back for every single customer. When you add up all this footprint of logistics and reverse logistics, you cannot beat the footprint of that, that washing machine that came from the factory and stayed at Max Muller's home for 13 years, right? But
Correct.
It's not that customer that we're talking about. We're talking about the customer who wants this change, and then, probably can, end up that particular asset goes to e-waste, right? And when you have the right comparison, and that is the true comparison, so some would say it's a handprint and not the footprint. And then you will be able to see why circular models truly make an impact. Right. So it's, it's a new game, right? So a lot of brain power has gone into that. So sometimes it's also a struggle, a challenge to say, is it indeed more sustainable when you have circular economies? And that's why I think the trick is to truly check what is the right reference point to compare with, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of
Important
course,
indeed.
yeah. And then, of course, if it's not just the right reference point, but is it significant? And it is significant because more and more consumers want this way of consuming. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, we need to have processes, ways, offerings from significant players in order to make sure that indeed we're not just creating more and more e-waste, right?
Mm-hmm.
In this particular example, of course. There are many other examples.
Yes, indeed. I think it's very bold from manufacturer to dare to address a refurbished market, because we very often hear that there is a risk of cannibalization of the original market. And then we see a lot of manufacturers that are leaving the second-hand market to other players instead of taking the grip on it. So I'm impressed, positively impressed by the fact that you took the leap to manage to offer refurbished equipment to users that are more interested in refurbished equipment than freshly produced equipment, and to still have the control on this market. It's quite unique.
Yeah, I think it's very important for us to know firsthand, right? And then as we learn how to truly maximize consumer and business value and product value, then, again, we open our eyes to partnering, right? So definitely not necessary to always have control if we are not the best. But the element where we think now is not just a knowledge and insight by doing it ourselves, but it's also the fact that the consumers truly still want that high quality, right? So the as good as new, right? So it's not the same. The refurbish from appliances from BlueMovement is not the same as what they would get as refurbished Bosch appliance from another entity, right? So that's our USP for this offering right now. However, when we see that in the end, maybe it's this and that, or this or that, we should always be open, right? Because it's not a zero-sum game.
Indeed. E-Lin, thank you for all these beautiful insights. It's time to reach a conclusion, and I have one conclusion question for you, and it's this one. If you could send a message to your past self about 3 to 5 years ago, before you joined the movement and you launched Product as a Service, what would be this message? What would you tell to the E-Lin of 2017, let's say?
So in other words, what did I learn and would do differently for BlueMovement?
That's another way to ask the question, indeed.
Yeah, I think, to be truly honest, right? I've mentioned it a couple of times, to maximize consumer value and business value, because in the beginning, maybe we were just very staunchly like saying, okay, let's save the world, right? So, and if we are just all about, let's say, one particular element, if it's, let's say, I just want to maximize business value, I don't care about sustainability or consumer value, or the other way around, I think that in the end, it's not balanced. So in other words, I'm a firm believer that it's got to be a balanced triple bottom line, right? It's got to be good for the planet, the people, and profit, right? Then we can truly do good for the planet in a sustainable way, pun intended, because then we are not driving ourselves out of business, right? So, and that is truly important, because at the end of the day, we need to make sure that we are always keeping an eye on all aspects, right? Be it for social or people or consumer, be it for the planet in the circularity and the footprint and the handprint, or be it for, can we sustain this from the economical perspective? Because if we can't, guess what? Its resources are constrained as well. Can we play in this game? Yeah. Or is another entity better at it? Or do we want to focus on other business models? And therefore, for me, this is the way forward. And that would be very important to keep focus all the time, balanced.
Beautiful conclusion. Thank you for your wise words, E-Lin. And I would like to thank you for sharing your insights and experiences with us today and with our audience. It's been a great pleasure to have you and to have this discussion that is always too short about product as a service, because there's so much to say and so much to share. But thanks for taking the time to be on our Product as a Service Champions podcast. I've learned a lot and very inspired by your successes. We'll make sure that your credentials are attached to this content, so people can reach out to you if they want to extend the discussion and get your insights. So again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for the opportunity. Hope to partner up to make our blue ocean the norm. Yeah.
That's a beautiful conclusion. Thank you again.
Thank you. Have a good one.